Thank you. And thank you all for joining. My name is Christopher Coleman. I'm the town administrator for the town of Westwood. We're here to talk about the Forbes Road traffic study that was done back in November, and also a little bit of history regarding Forbes Road and some of the traffic calming measures that have been already put in place, and some that were put in place and then requested to be removed. I want everyone just to understand, please, that there are still other entities that the town is communicating with, those being the town of Norwood, as well as with the Norfolk County Commissioners. As many of you may know, Everett Street is a county road, and we still need to communicate with them regarding any improvements that we look to make. What I would like to do is to turn it over to Todd Fortune, our Director of Public Works, who's going to provide a little bit of history on some of the improvements that have been made to Forbes Road in the up until this point. And then we'll turn it over to Liz so she can go over her study, and then certainly open up to any questions, try to answer the questions that you may have. And just want to remind everyone, this meeting is being recorded. So if there are conversations that you're planning on having at your home, or just please mute yourself so the others can focus on the topics that are being discussed this evening. I'm going to turn over to Todd Fortune, our Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for everyone joining in today. Obviously, there's been some history of traffic calming measures that we've taken along the Canton Street corridor, Everett Street, along with Forbes Road. Some of the residents have been a part of this from years ago when we had our premeditated concerns with respect to the university project, along with some new residents that have been pretty vocal and calling in and voicing their concerns and frustrations with what they've observed recently. Just with respect to measures that we've taken in the past along Canton Street, along Forbes Road, and again along Everett Street, we did have a Safe Routes to School project that was implemented about 11 years ago. That was a state-funded project that included enhanced and increased sidewalk infrastructure, improvements to the sidewalks. We've had some speed hump installations along Forbes Road, along with Everett Street. We've installed some advanced signage, some of which are radar signs that actually detect the actual speed, miles per hour, that vehicles are traveling. And we even back in the day installed a double yellow line that was running down Forbes Road, and actually had to remove that due to some resident concerns. There were some concerns with respect to property value, that it was a measure, be it was a small measure, not as significant as a speed hump or an infrastructural improvement, but it was a measure as part of our plans to try to slow down volume. And that was something that was actually drew a little bit of a stir, and it was a high level of request from the residents at that time for us to remove that. So we actually did remove, again, not a major measure, but it was a measure. And it was important to note that some of these measures were really a proactive approach to address a problem that we really didn't know was going to exist or exist at the time. And it was rightfully so, though. The fear of the residents with the construction and everything that was going on and projected down at University Ave, it definitely called for a form of mitigation. These were measures that were put in place well before that actual project was completed. When we look into measures, especially traffic calming measures, the first thing that we have to look at is data. I mean, we can go out there and observe, and you can look at vehicles traveling up and down corridors, and you can speculate or assume just based on what we as individuals are seeing, but it all has to be driven on actual data. And the data supports, or in fact warrants, whether or not we pursue a design, whether it be a high-level design of a major infrastructural improvement or a minor improvement because the issue at hand really doesn't warrant a major overhaul, but there is something out there. So when we looked into the current concerns with respect to Forbes Road and cut-through traffic and speeding, all of our measures, especially from the public works standpoint, has to be driven off of data that could actually point us in a direction to try to mitigate an issue. If there's no issue there, we're really handcuffed with respect to what we can do and how creative we can be. And that's really when we lean on a firm such as TEC, who's extremely familiar with the Forbes Road neighborhood. They played a large role, obviously, with Safe Routes to School many years ago, and have assisted us with a lot of our traffic management issues throughout the community over the past several years. So, we leaned on TEC. TEC is here. Liz Altman's done a tremendous job in collecting data. She's been speaking with the town and trying to present it in a way that the average citizen can understand. Because as I always say in every meeting, I'm not an engineer. So I think my standpoint is a general resident, doesn't have an engineering background. I want to hear the data. I want to understand the data, and I don't want to be confused in a way that I'm misconstrued one way or the other. So Liz has done a great job in putting together a presentation, and she'll explain the level of data that was collected and really where we stand with options that exist. So Liz, that being said, I'd like to turn it over to you. And again, thank you for joining us tonight.
Sure, I'm just gonna, thank you, Todd. I'm going to share my screen. So my name is Liz Altman. I'm the Director of Transportation Planning at TEC. And I joined some of the residents back in November to talk about this project, the issues that people were seeing, some of the concerns people had, and we based our data collection off of those concerns. And I'm here tonight to kind of tell you what we found and what our recommendations are. So back in November, we defined the project understanding as identify potential cut-through traffic within the Forbes Road neighborhood, evaluate the volume of truck traffic through the neighborhood, and observe vehicle speeds. So to that end, we performed turning movement counts, which are actual counts of vehicles making left turns, right turns, through movements at the intersections of Forbes Road with Everett Street and the intersection of Forbes Road with Canton Street. We did this from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. consistently on Tuesday, November 16th and Wednesday, November 17th. We also did turning movement counts at Everett Street and Canton Street as kind of the third leg, third point of the triangle. And those were just the peak hour counts from 7 to 9 in the morning and 4 to 6 in the afternoon on both Tuesday and Wednesday in November. We also placed a tube counter on Forbes Road to record the speeds of vehicles and the classification of vehicles for 3 days, 72 hours from Tuesday the 16th through Thursday the 18th. And that was located between Forbes and Canton Street. Between Everett Street and Canton Street, excuse me. So the data results indicate that Forbes Road carries an average of 794 vehicles per day. That's the average over the 3 days. The 85th percentile speed was recorded as 28 miles per hour southbound and 24 miles an hour northbound. 85th percentile speed is the speed at which 85% of the vehicles are traveling at or below. So this is good news, right? The 85% of the vehicles on this road are traveling less than the posted speed limit. A maximum of 50 vehicles a day were recorded traveling between 30 and 35 miles an hour. And a maximum of 10 vehicles a day were recorded traveling over 35 miles an hour. 15 to 18 delivery vehicles per day were recorded, which are about the size of a UPS truck, something like that, small delivery vehicles for packages, things like that. Less than 5 large vehicles a day were recorded. Large vehicles would include landscaping trucks with a trailer, might be somebody getting a delivery in a large box truck, such as an appliance or a piece of furniture. But no, what you would call 18-wheelers. No 18-wheelers were recorded on our data collection. So I would like to point out, at this point that it is posted at 30 miles an hour. So you would expect some vehicles to go over the posted speed. But if you're within 5 miles an hour of the posted speed limit, that indicates that your current traffic calming is working. So then we did a cut-through evaluation. So the turning movement counts are done by video. So it's of a quality that you can tell, like the make and the color of hold on, somebody just joined us, of a vehicle that's making a turn. I can't tell who's driving it. I can't tell the license plate or anything like that. It's sufficient enough so if I can tell if somebody is making a red SUV is making a right turn off of Canton Street onto Forbes Road, and then a couple minutes later is making the right turn from Forbes Road onto Everett Street. I can track those vehicles, and those were essentially the movements that we were tracking. The people that were making the right turn off of Canton and then making a right turn or a through movement at Everett, and then the reverse movement, people who are making a left or a through onto Forbes from Everett and then making a left turn onto Canton. So those are the two cut through movements, I would call them. And sorry, two more people just joined us. The cut through traffic was identified as 68% of the total southbound traffic and 62% of the total northbound traffic between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. That's an average of 20 vehicles an hour per direction, between 13 to 18, maybe 21 in various hours. So it is a significant amount. However, it is an average of 20 vehicles per direction, which is, one every couple of minutes. So we identified that that might be a concern. So any mitigation that we would want to put into effect has to consider emergency responder access, ability to enforce the mitigation, and any impact to adjacent streets that are intersect Forbes Road. So we considered a number of different things to try and reduce the number of people cutting through. And again, I can't tell if those are other residents of Westwood or if they are employees in a certain area or if they're neighbors, or I can't tell who those people are just because they're traveling between Canton and Everett on Forbes.
Where do you want to go? Chateau?
No,
So
Chicken Joe's?
no.
Mike,
Excuse me,
you're not on mute.
Anyone in attendance, if you could please put your microphone on mute while the presentation is being made, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
So we did consider a number of different options, including fully restricting access to Forbes Road, either at Everett or at Canton Street, making, just eliminating that access, restricting by time of day, turning movements. But really the cut through traffic occurred all day. So there would be no way to say, just in the morning, we can enforce no right turns from Canton Street onto Forbes. And the enforceability of that is really difficult for the police department. Both emergency responding, all emergency responders were very concerned about restricting access to Forbes Road and the increase in the response time that would create by fully blocking either end of Forbes Road. while that would stop the cutting through, it would really be a detriment to the safety of the residents in the area. So we came up with a kind of radical idea that we're proposing is probably a strong word, but showing you just for your feedback and thoughts. And that is to restrict Forbes Road at Everett Street to right turns entering and southbound left turns exiting. So the only movements you would be able to make at this intersection would be from Everett Street westbound onto Forbes Road northbound, and from Forbes Road northbound onto Everett Street eastbound. That would be constructed in such a way that emergency vehicles could still travel down Everett Street and make the left into Forbes Road, continuing to permit emergency access to the neighborhood while restricting passenger vehicle access through. At this point, the only way we can reduce the number of cut through vehicles is to do something radical, because the speeds are within 5 miles an hour, the posted speeds. And honestly, the Forbes Road volumes are consistent with a local road. So it's what we would expect on this type of roadway. I understand that when you're standing on the side of the road, 35 miles an hour looks very fast. However, it is consistent with the posted speed limit out there. So this is our recommended alternative. If the residents would like to comment on it, I'm happy to discuss. There, as Chris said, there are some steps that would have to be taken to move this forward, which would include discussions with the town of Norwood and the county. But if we want to restrict cut through traffic here on Forbes Road, we would have to do something fairly drastic. So that
Liz,
is my,
before, if you could just go back to that last screen for 1 second, and if you could just take your cursor from the top left of the screen where it has the Westwood Norwood line, just so those in attendance can see where Westwood ends and Norwood begins.
yes.
You can see that it's a majority of what is being discussed this evening is within the town of Norwood. So we would certainly need to work with Norwood officials. And as I mentioned before, Everett Street is a county street or county road, and we would need to continue communication with Norfolk County commissioners. In addition, this proposal or this discussion item would also need to go before our local select board.
So
If I could just, I'm sorry, if I could just say a couple more things. Some of the other options that Liz did this, or we talked about the dead end, and some residents in prior meetings talked about a cul-de-sac, some talked about a dead end. As again, if you can see the property line, we do not have, and Liz, maybe you can speak to this a little bit, what the space needed to create a cul-de-sac, or if you had that dead end. I think we already talked about the dead end of the concern that public safety had in regarding to response time, but the cul-de-sac would encompass, if I'm not mistaken, some currently owned private property, as well as something working with the town of Norwood, because the majority of that would be in Norwood as well. If we were to try to construct the cul-de-sac solely within the town of Westwood, if I'm not mistaken, Liz, that would be more land that we would need land that's currently privately owned.
correct. We would want to have a radius of 50 feet, so 100-foot wide circle to allow emergency vehicles and trucks or things like that to turn around if they got to a blocked end. In order to do that all in the town of Westwood, we would need private property on either side. Also, it's a wide, they're not very attractive cul-de-sacs if they're not large enough to have a center island. So you would have a large 100-foot wide circle of pavement right in this area or at the other end. So I have a couple of people with raised hands. I think
How do I raise my hand?
so. On the bottom of your screen, there should be a hand raised option. So the first one that came up was Sheng Fei. If you unmute yourself, then you can.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, and I think that the town would like just to have your name and address for the
Yes.
the record.
Thank you. So my name is Shen Fei Fu. I live on 70 Forbes Road. And thank you so much for sharing this information. So I do have a question. I guess if I may, I have two questions. For one is early on when you show the numbers, the vehicle count and then the vehicle speed. I do want to raise that I do have very high concern about the high speeds, like 35 to 40. To my best knowledge, I've been doing a bit of research, like if the speed is like over 30 or at 30, if a passenger get hit by a car, the survival rate is really low. It's actually only 50%. And with so many like kids and elderly and just people working around, like taking walk and walking dog in the neighborhood, I actually think those numbers is like things are really, it's like a bad number. It's actually not a good number. And also that number of 794, again, like according to the paper I'm reading, is actually like in a pool. This is not like an ideal number for residential area actually. So first of all, this part, I think we actually needed to have a way to reduce the number of a vehicle, but also the speed of the vehicle. So I would really wish like we can have other ways like a speed bump or other ways to reduce it. And then jumping to the method you are proposing here, I'm curious what's the expected results we will see with this, what you are proposing, like how much traffic are we expected to reduce?
Liz, can I just interject or intervene for one quick second, just to a point? And thank you for your comments. It was actually a good segue to a point of mine that I've had just through experience of implementing these measures over the years in various parts of the community. If we're ever to incorporate a measure, be it temporary or permanent, it's all the level of success has historically been driven off the baseline data. If the baseline data isn't there to support anything, now the level of success is all but diminished, really. Like the cards are stacked against whatever we're going to put out there. So to your point, like measuring, how we're going to see how successful this is, if we do pursue this option, just say, for example, we do have to keep that in mind, that our numbers aren't so off the wall that for example, they're not like they were with respect to the Dover Conant High Rock traffic calming project, where we're dealing with thousands of vehicles. Now, all of a sudden, we incorporated the measures and we had good baseline data in favor of what we were going to incorporate that really made it look that much more successful. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to keep that in the back of everyone's mind prior to Liz responding to that comment. And thank you again.
I want to raise my hand. Can you see my hand?
I see a couple of hands and I'm going kind of in order of the hands being raised.
So Liz, if I can just say that in the chat, there's another attendee that would like to speak. So Chuck and Mr. Harding, I have you down on the list, and as soon as Liz goes through the hands that were raised before you guys commented, we'll get to you.
Thank you.
So I think with this, like I said, if you want to see significant results, you would have to do something drastic. So this is a fairly drastic measure by limiting movements at an intersection physically. It would be for everyone. So the residents who currently make the left from Everett onto Forbes would have to go around and come in on a side street. So there would be some impacts to the intersecting streets. as residents of Forbes Road would probably use them to get onto Forbes Road. So the next one I have is Christina.
Great, thank you so much. I really appreciate you doing this for us, Chris. I know we've been torturing you, but this is a very serious concern for residents of Forbes Road. So I'm at 137 Forbes Road. I have a 6-year-old. I've been talking to our neighbors, and there have been multiple children already hit on this road. So the traffic measures that we have done thus far have not worked. And I do not want to get to the point where I'm attending either my son's funeral or another child on this street's funeral. This is unacceptable. Todd, I get your point about baseline data. However, this was done from 11/16 to 11/18. We were still in lockdown. Most people did not return to work until March or April of this year. Xing-Fei brought up some really great points about survivability. So Elizabeth, well, you said 30 miles per hour is really acceptable. The survivability rate is not at that speed. We have a huge number of highly distracted drivers coming from Amazon, looking at their phones, not paying attention, driving 30 miles per hour. It is totally unacceptable. You know, I can't stress enough that we need to do something. I'm getting really anxious that we're saying that we have to do something and we've got to coordinate with Norwood here. Have we explored the option of cul-de-sacing at Glandor so we don't have to take private property? Have we explored not having to work with Norwood?
I will say that the speed limit is posted at 30 miles an hour. The way that you would get that reduced is going through the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, and they base all their speed limits on 85th percentile speeds, which in this case are, like I said, 28 miles an hour southbound and 24 miles an hour northbound. The state would not reduce the speed limit in this situation. So we did consider cutting the street off in the middle, but that also would lengthen emergency response times. So
Yes, we do have public safety on this Zoom call as well, if they'd like to comment on response times, because realistically, from our standpoint, public works standpoint, it's not in my jurisdiction to comment on that. I do know there have been concerns that Christina, we are looking into options. It's our desire to try to resolve an issue, but there are reasons why you can and can't do some things. So I'm not sure if anyone would like to comment from public safety regarding that.
So before either the chiefs or lieutenant comment, and I'm not passing blame or judgment, I just want to make sure everyone's aware. When the police department did increase enforcement in this area regarding speed, at least when I drove by and I spoke to the officer who was doing the work, at that time he pulled over 4 vehicles. They were all from the neighborhood. Not Forbes Road, but they were from that neighborhood. So I just want to make sure that everyone's aware that when there is increased enforcement, it's not all people who are working or going to Amazon or using it as a cut through to get to Route 1A. There are other people that may be going above the speed limit. So I just want to, again, not passing judgment, just want to make sure everyone's on the same page.
That makes sense. And get them all. We do not need a kid killed. I don't care where they're from.
So would either Chief Silva, Chief Deckers, or Lieutenant Vinci care to comment regarding public safety?
I can comment from the public safety standpoint. This is Chief Deckers. In regards to doing any form of traffic calming that includes like a cul-de-sac would drastically increase our response times into those areas. which is concerning to me because if somebody's having a heart attack, seconds count. If there's a fire, seconds count. And right now, by changing that configuration, we're already restricted of, getting into that area a little bit from other ways if there was a problem. So I would not be in favor of any type of cul-de-sacing that would restrict access to that area, just because our response times could almost double.
Even with a gate though, even a cul-de-sac with a gate that you guys could access like you've done in other parts of town?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the gates at all because again, it still slows down the traffic. And the problem is during this time of the year where it's beautiful out, no problem. The other problem is during the winter, when you can't get in because either somebody plows it in, someone pushes snow out of their driveway and plows it in, then it ices over. It's just a very, very difficult situation when it comes to that. And I totally respect your perception and all that kind of stuff. It's just for us, I have to look at a much bigger picture when it comes to fires. And 68% of our business is EMS. And we would hate to see those response times triple like that. That would really impact us as a community.
The next hand up I have is William Fitzpatrick.
Yep, thanks. Yeah, I live at 211 Forbes Road, and just want to make a comment on the placement of the tubes that monitored the traffic and the speed coming down Forbes Road. I find it interesting that the northbound traffic was actually slower than the southbound traffic, and I think that makes sense in relevance to where it was placed. I thought the tube was placed only about 20, 30 feet behind the one of the speed bumps. And if you were coming up north, it would make sense that you would slow down, hit that speed bump, and you'd be going slightly slower. But if you were going southbound, you would probably be speeding up or approaching that speed bump and going a little bit faster before slowly braking prior to hitting that speed bump. So I was curious whether the placement of the tubes impacted kind of the baseline results here at all too. I don't know if you have spots of where those tubes were placed, but originally when I came down the road, I had concerns on where they were placed in relevance to that speed bump.
Well, because of the location of the speed bumps and the entrance from Everett Street, we tried to place it in a location that we would capture some people maybe speeding up, coming out of Everett Street or heading towards coming out of the speed humps. So that's why we put them in that location. From a volume standpoint, it wouldn't have changed anywhere on the road. I can understand what you're saying, but it just indicates to me that those speed humps are working and people are slowing down to travel over them and between them. So
for that portion of the road though, I'd say like closer down to my end of the road, it definitely seems like people are speeding. Like where we're looking at right now, I'd say like that's peak speeds coming down there.
Okay, thank you. The next one I have is
We could, at least by my count, I believe Chuck indicate that he had a question. So Chuck, if you could just unmute yourself and say your full, share your full name and your address would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, my name is Charles Elliott. I'm 542 Everett Street. And I have 3 comments / questions. The first one is years ago, when Martinetti was in the location where it's now Walker, there was supposed to be a decided, no questions asked, that when you entered the Martinetti Walker from Everett Street, you had to take a right turn and that was your only option. And in leaving that area, your only option was to take a left turn out. And what that did was it kept traffic coming from Martinetti's into Everett Street and Forbes Road. However, the left turn, right turn only was not working, does not work now. And I think if that were made more of a difficult turn to get into that area, it would assist in the Forbes Road traffic. My second comment now has to do with Everett Street. Getting a lot of Jeeps running down Everett Street. And obviously they're running down Everett Street and up Everett Street because they are doing business or one way or another with a dealership down there on Route 1. So if something could be done about that, and I don't know what you can do, that would relieve some of the traffic on Everett Street and probably also on Forbes Road. Regarding truck traffic, we're still having truck traffic, not to the extent that we've had in the past, but it still exists. And we got heavy earth moving trucks moving down Everett Street from the construction that's taking place at the corner of Partridge and Canton Street. My last comment is, what is there that stops us from putting signs up, for example, at the intersection of Forbes and Everett Street that says no right turns between 7 and 10? And likewise on Everett Street, when appropriate. Is that a possibility?
Signage is a possibility. It's just very difficult to enforce.
Okay, but at least if you have it there, if there's an officer in the area and he happens to witness it, then he's got a basis for issuing a ticket. Right now, there's no basis for issuing a ticket. Someone driving down Forbes Road at 7 o'clock in the morning trying to get to business wherever. If there's no stop sign and no sign that says no right turns between these hours, then they can continue to do it with no possibility of getting a ticket.
I also know, again, as Liz had mentioned, enforcement becomes an issue. And again, I don't want to overlap because it's not my jurisdiction to speak on behalf of enforcement. But even with that idea, along with what is proposed is really our only option that we could consider here. We're still pushing traffic elsewhere, and it's going to go some other road, so some other neighborhood, some other roadway, be it Glandor, or primarily in this case, even the proposed, it's essentially going to push anybody that was driving down Forbes Road to now just go down Everett Street. So I think that's another concern that I've observed with feedback in the hundreds of meetings we've had with traffic calming projects throughout the community, that shutting down a road, restricting movements on a road, cul-de-sacing a road, the vehicles have to go somewhere. So now we're taking all of those vehicles and putting them elsewhere. And again, I keep relying on data with respect to this because it's really the only thing that we can look at from my standpoint of infrastructure or Liz's standpoint of incorporating something. But if there isn't a crazy level of numbers, and Christina and everybody in the neighborhood, I'm not disputing. I've lived in town. We actually just recently moved, but that's another story. But I lived on a street in town that had a significant number of cut through traffic, but it wasn't an astonishing number, but to the residents on that corridor, it seemed like it was. So if we're going to start taking measures, now you're taking really what wasn't numerically a large issue, taking those numbers and combining that with other roadways that might not have had an issue, but now all of a sudden those numbers have increased. So they're like, now those are double. So now we've actually created an issue in a sense.
Would more speed bumps help traffic problem?
The speed bumps definitely definitely slow those that want to slow down. I mean, if you're an animal driver, you're an animal driver and you're just going to ignore everything. But I mean, for the average driver, yes, it slows them down. But what you do find is vehicles tend to want to speed up afterwards to make up for ground. But yeah, you could incorporate more speed humps and neighborhoods and add them. But again, through experience of neighborhood meetings, several people want them, but they don't necessarily want them in front of their house. In every speed hump, it's not just a speed hump. It comes along with, on average, 4 signs that now have to get installed, advanced signage and signage at the location. So now we're taking Forbes Road, adding more speed humps that more than likely there'll be a resident or two that don't want them in the preferred choice, but that is the only spot you can put it in based on topography and visibility, line of sight, so on and so forth. Along with that, we're adding 4 to 8 to possibly more signs in that neighborhood. It becomes a sign district. So they are effective. It's very unlikely that the residents would want to see them and have all the increase in signage, but they are effective. But I truthfully, with respect to Forbes Road, I don't even know that we could even fit any more in there, to be honest with you, again, with line of sight and topography.
Have we got texturized synthetic paving elsewhere in the town, and how effective is it?
It's very effective from a standpoint of visibility, of delineating a crosswalk from the pavement. We're incorporating them in all of our new paving projects now. There's quite a bit of them along Route 109. It's a new texturized crosswalk imprint that we've used. It's great. The reviews have been tremendous. They're actually on Winter Street as well. So those prove to be effective from a crosswalk standpoint. From an island standpoint, yeah, I mean, most people will adhere to what's on the ground and try to drive around it. But, you know, once you get used to the fact that it's just an imprint from an island standpoint and delineating that you're supposed to stay in this lane, it's like everything. They're just going to abuse it and drive over it.
Well, on these, I don't mean to talk.
Excuse me, Chuck.
Yeah.
You've asked several questions. I would just want to make sure that others in attendance have an opportunity to ask their questions.
Yeah, no,
but we can
that's
certainly
fine.
come back to you.
That's fine.
Thank you very much. Before we go further, Christina, you made a comment, if I understood you correctly, regarding children that are being hit on Forbes Road. This is information that I'm asking our chiefs to look into regarding calls regarding children being hit on Forbes Road. And we'll certainly
We've had 2.
We'll certainly
talked
get
to
back to
folks.
you on that. As of right now, I don't believe they have. I don't know if the chiefs or lieutenant have access to that information right now, but we are certainly looking into that. It's at least the first for me to hear about that. But I just want to let everyone know we will be looking into that.
And can you pull the numbers from right in front of the speed hump? You've got a mileage counter. Can you pull the number of cars that are coming through? Because my guess is it is a lot higher than 794 now, because we are now open and more people have returned to work and are regularly commuting.
I will certainly talk to our team about that. I don't know the answer off the top of my head right now, but I will look into that. I do want to get to some other residents who had a question, and Mr. Harding was next.
Yes. Hi, Todd. I don't know. Cancel yours.
Mr. Harding.
I'll leave the meeting.
Hang on a second.
I'm on the meeting.
Okay.
I'm not.
I think we had 2 computers going, so sorry. John Harding, 148 Forbes Road. As most people know, I've been involved in this for a long period of time. And I think what's being proposed is a very excellent suggestion for the town to pursue, and hopefully Norwood will cooperate in the process. What we have now that we didn't have when many of us went through the traffic calming process and worked with Beta Group and town officials to come up with what exists on the ground now is Amazon. That did not exist. It's a new problem as of when they opened. And to me, one of the prime advantages of what's being proposed is that this should really get rid of Amazon traffic coming through. There are 2 main aspects to it. One is we all see a parade, even though there are certain restriction measures, at the Amazon facility, what we witness every night is a parade of Amazon vans coming down to return to the warehouse, going from Canton Street down Forbes, making the right, in many cases, barely stopping at the intersection to go to home base. That would be eliminated. Same thing with employees coming from other cities and towns going to work at Amazon, they're going to be prohibited from taking that route. And then when they leave at night or in the early morning or throughout the day, because Amazon really has a lot of different shifts, which may account in some respect for the fact that the cut through traffic is fairly consistent throughout the day, it's going to prevent those people from coming up Everett, making a left onto Forbes to go up to the highway. So I think this addresses, you know, in many respects, some of the new things that we've seen as a result of Amazon. And if I'm looking at this proposal correctly, the other thing that it addresses, you know, we were just walking tonight at about 4:30, and what happens at the old Martinetti, now MS Walker location is that employee vehicles, you know, people working there come to that intersection and they jog across onto Forbes Road. It's not a squared off intersection, but what they do is they momentarily stop and then cut across. And there's a very significant, and of course in the morning when they're going to work, you know, it's the opposite direction and going down Forbes and then cutting across. So that's another thing that would be eliminated by this proposal. And again, I think all of this needs to be driven by public safety. We have a lot of small children on the street, and it seems this would very much deter, you know, the people that are just using Forbes as a cut through from doing so. So I really support this idea. I think it's an excellent suggestion and builds on the work that was done in the original traffic calming measures.
Thank you, Mr. Harding. So Liz, I think, if I'm not mistaken, was it Mr. Olenoff? Was he the next hand raised? Okay.
Steve Olenoff, 52 Glandor Road. So I want to back up what Chuck and John Harding just said about traffic coming to and from Walker. In fact, I was just there the hour before this, and 2 cars came out from Walker, and they make a sharp right and then a sharp left and head up Forbes. And then the opposite way they go in. So the driveway from Walker was originally constructed, and we made them construct it, turning that way to the left to force the cars to go to Everett Street and to stay in Norwood and not go out into either Everett Street in Westwood or Forbes. They still, it's just not, it's still physically possible for cars, and they do that all the time. Now, originally, as part of that agreement to curve that road, there's supposed to have been a sign there for the cars coming out of Walker that says left turn only. And that sign was up there when the road was originally built, didn't last very long, and it's never been replaced. We could at least have that sign that says left turn only. Then the police could at least enforce that. Since it's physically possible to do it, I think maybe a small traffic island or a few plastic bollards in the middle of the road there could stop the people coming out and going right. Make it really impossible for them to go to the right. I don't know, the other way you couldn't really do it, but that would be a help if you at least had that sign there. And I don't know what other kind of sign, how you would phrase it for at the end of Forbes Road, saying they can make a left or a right turn only, or can't go straight across. And then you have the means of enforcing that. Because I think 90% of the people, those cut through traffic is people coming and going from Walker. Now, to be honest, those people know what they're doing. They know that they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. And I've noticed that when they do go Forbes, they are very careful to not go too fast. I've even followed some of them just to see. But I think that you should concentrate on fixing what was originally designed and getting it working the way it was supposed to be working would be a first step. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Olenoff.
Agreed. We did see people, we did count people making those illegal movements. It is designed to restrict left turns entering and right turns exiting. But we did see people making that movement across from that driveway to Forbes Road.
Just to remind, if you're not speaking, if you can put your microphone on mute, that would be appreciated. So we did have a comment in the chat. Jennifer Murphy wanted to speak. Is she still on?
I am. Hi. Thank you. I just sort of wanted to piggyback. My question was sort of asked by William, but I was curious if Liz could speak to where these tubes were placed and where the speed of the cars were measured. And I ask that because we live at 98, which is on the corner of Forbes and Cushing. And I find that cars really come really quickly down from Canton Street. And, you know, they will slow down sometimes at the speed bump that is sort of at the end of our driveway. Sometimes they don't slow down. But I was just curious about where those tubes were and if they were registering the speed of the cars coming in from Canton before the speed bump. So thank you in advance.
The tube counters were placed between Glandor and Spellman in that straightaway there.
Okay, so they wouldn't have registered these cars coming in off of Canton?
Not directly. They would have had to travel down Forbes Road and then
Yes.
past the
Yep.
speed humps to the
Yep.
tube counter.
Yeah, but what I often find is that people fly in from Canton and then they, you know, especially the people that are commuting to work, they know where the speed bumps are, right? So they come in really quickly and then they know to slow down at the speed bump sort of near our house. And then they know another speed bump is coming further down the street. So I don't know, that's just, I know that's anecdotal. It's not, doesn't go with the data, but I was just curious if that, you know, if those speeds were being registered. That was sort of my concern. I don't know if other people find that as well, but it's our observation. So thank you for answering that.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm sorry, we have someone identified as iPhone, Phon. I don't know the person's name, but if you could type your name into the chat, I'm happy to call upon you. Next, I see Elizabeth's iPhone. Elizabeth, if you could share your whole name and your address, please.
Hey, Chris, it's Beth Murphy. How are you? 175 Forbes. Yeah, I had two comments. One was just down at the bottom of Forbes where the folks coming out of MS Walker completely ignore that going left and go straight up Forbes no matter what time of day it is. So every car that I see, they tend to do that. So my question would be, you're gonna restrict no right turn at the end of Forbes. How's that going to work? Because we know it's not working across the street. That's my first comment. And then to Jennifer's point, again, it's anecdotal, but just when you pass her house going up Forbes, there's lots of curves in that area and cars just fly in that section. Definitely on the upper part of Forbes as well, where there's really tight corners. Up there as well.
So I think that as far as the design goes, the combination of the two restrictions would really eliminate the people that are trying to go from between Walker and Forbes because of the, I mean, I guess they could, I can't, because we want to maintain the emergency access. I think it would really limit the people that made that movement. It would become very uncomfortable to do it on a regular basis. And what we're trying to get is people to go, you know, stay on the highways.
I'm sorry, I don't know who iPhone Phon is. Oh, I'm sorry. So Tom, Tom, if you could unmute and share your name and your address, please.
Okay, I'm Tom Cafarola. I think you're hearing me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I live at 147 Forbes, which is right about exactly halfway between the Canton and the Everett Street intersections. I've been living there for 40 years, so I've been seeing traffic issues for all that time. I also, when Christina mentioned that kids have been hit on the street, one of them was my son. Fortunately, the car just hit one of the wheels on his big wheel, so he was not hurt. But we did have a police officer come out, but it was many years ago prior to the speed humps. And then diagonally across the street from me, there was a family named Guglielmi, and their son Danny was also hit in some way. I don't know the details of that, but I'd be glad to try to figure out when that was if the police chief wants to follow up on that. But anyway, that's my anecdotal about kids getting hit. There was also a weird situation where one of the adults was hit in his riding mower. And he was not hit. So as far as I know, no one's been seriously injured by that. I wanted to, I guess we've hit this a few times, but I wanted to ask Liz again where those tubes were placed, because in my experience, I see a lot of very fast cars going between the humps. They coming down the street, they get over one hump. Oh boy, now I'm free to go. And Forbes is straight and downhill, and cars just really go fast until they see the sign, oh, I got to slow down again. So I'm seeing, in my experience, of course, it's where I live, cars are really speeding between the humps. I know Ms. Murphy saw it the other way, cars coming down from Canton ahead of the hump. But if there was a tube placed between the humps, I'd be interested to see what those speeds were. Thank you.
It was not between the humps. It was south of well, it was a little north of Glandor Road.
Yeah, but preceding the lower hump, I believe is what you're saying.
Yes.
So it doesn't sound like we've measured speed between the humps. I mean, in my experience, that's where I'm seeing the fastest speeds.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe we could redo that. If there's a follow-up study, I'd like to see the tube placed between the humps.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Yep.
I do have a direct message to me, Chris, that came in earlier, and I just saw that it was direct to me, so I apologize. From Jennifer Watson at 440 Everett, requesting to know the expected impact of increased traffic along Everett and Canton Street. So that would be the result if we, as Todd was saying before, if we restrict turning movements on Forbes Road, entering and exiting Forbes Road, that we would hope that they would stay on the highways and go, in that route. But some of those cut through vehicles will use Canton Street to Everett Street or Everett Street to Canton Street, possibly. Maybe not all of the average of 40 vehicles in an hour, but a portion of them. So that was something to consider.
I think I don't want to speak for everyone here, but the GPS world will inform its clients when they're trying to find the fastest route from point A to point B. And right now, if that's Forbes and they can make the right-hand turn, GPS may direct people that way or motorists that way. And the other thing, if this were to go into place, they may be directing people down Everett or Canton to Everett to get all the way down. So we can't control what the GPS world is going to, the information that's going to be providing to its customers or its clients. But as Todd said, and we found in other traffic calming measures when certain restrictions are placed on one road, some traffic tends to go on some neighboring roads. So I think that's something that certainly could happen. But I just wanted to make sure that everyone was still aware of that. We have, Christina, do you still have your hand up? Do you have another question? I'm sorry.
Absolutely, I do. So, and I know this is anecdotal, but I have talked to several parents who have also had near misses. I know we've had 2 hits of children, but I have seen it in front of my own house twice in the last several months, kids almost getting hit that have been playing with my son. And then also, and I know, you know, we have had, you know, I think Tom was talking about the routing of traffic to the arterial roads. That's exactly where traffic should be. It should not be cutting through neighborhood roads, in my opinion. It's just, it's not safe.
Thank you, Christine. Sorry, Tom, do you still have do you have another question, Tom?
Was that me?
Yes.
Am I the Tom you're referring
Yes.
to?
Your hand is up. I don't know if it's still up or if you have another question.
No, I think I left it up, but
Okay.
One thing I will add, since I've been on the road probably longer than most people, there was a period of time when the street was very kid-centric. Then that changed and there weren't many kids, and now we're back into a lot of kids on the street. So that's why a lot of these concerns have been raised. And, you know, Christina talked about near misses. It's still with us more so than ever, really. Thank you. And I'll try to keep my hand down now.
Thank you. And just as a quick update, our chiefs and our lieutenant have done some quick research. We will certainly continue to dig further. So Christina, I don't know, I'm saying Christina because you shared this along with Tom, but we have not gotten reports of those 2 children that were hit. But we will continue to look. So based on our quick read right now, just want to share with the group what our public safety officials have reviewed. We will continue to look into the data to see if we were called out or public safety was called out for those incidences. But just to let people know, we're still looking into that. Are there any other, Mr. Harding had another question. Tom or Liz, can you address what the timetable you are working with?
Well, we still need to talk to a bunch of people. Todd, do you have an idea on what that time frame would be?
No, I know Chris and I and the group that's been involved in looking into this, we're still waiting to hear some final feedback from the town of Norwood. We will have to speak with the county commissioners and of course go before the select board if we decide to go with the proposed. I will make a comment too. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with any of the residents' concerns and I never want to come across that way by any means. And I've said this many times to several residents that have called on various issues throughout the community that it's our goal to address any issues that we possibly can. And I'd love to say, yes, let's do this and everything is great and don't worry about a thing. Truth of the matter is you can't. The major truth of the matter is all of our roadways, be it in Westwood, Canton, every community throughout the Commonwealth and throughout the world, that said, was built a certain way and it wasn't built to defend a Waze app or whatever apps everyone else is using to cut through and create the shortest route. So we're trying to be as creative as possible to combat, you know, technology that's pushing vehicles to the shortest, quickest route. And Forbes is one of those roadways that obviously, no matter what, that's where Waze is going to take everybody. So whatever measures that we could or can incorporate, we would love to do. It's just, again, speaking on behalf of imprints or speed humps or even sidewalks to some degree. There's so much more that goes into it than just saying, yep, let's just put the speed hump out here and call it a day. Our first issue is just discussing it. Is it warranted, again, through numbers? But more importantly than that, in my eyes, is are the residents going to be, or the direct abutter that's going to live in front of the speed hump, are they going to be okay with it? And if they are, can you even put it in there? And I've mentioned topography and line of sight. There is criteria that it has to meet from a liability standpoint. We can't just put a speed hump in the middle of a hill where you're coming over the hill and you can't see it and then bang, now we've created another issue. So we're forever looking to try to resolve these issues. We're also combating, again, a technology and application on people's phones. So again, roads were built a certain way and we're trying to combat it. So I hope everybody can bear with the level of patience, and you know that we typically come in with an answer, and if we've exhausted every route and every avenue, that you trust our answer that we have exhausted every route and avenue and this is our only option. Or we might not have an option infrastructurally related, but there might be a different style of an option. So if you can bear with us with it, we're not pacifying anything here. We're just trying to go through the process the right way, like we have on several other projects throughout the community.
Thank you, Todd. And obviously, like I said earlier, we would, in addition to Norwood and to Norfolk County, we will be bringing this matter to the select board and sharing your comments this evening. We do have 2 select board members who are logged into this session right now. I don't know if either one of you, Marianne or Michael, if you'd like to speak, but we would certainly have to bring this back to the select board. I also want to just reiterate what Todd mentioned earlier at the very beginning. If this is something that we're going to move forward with, and Todd, maybe, I don't know if you have to expand on this a little bit, but we would have a temporary setup first. We would then study our temporary setup to see if there's any adjustments that were needed before it became permanent. And right now, I don't know how long that temporary setup would last, but it would be very, we did have some temporary lines. For those of you who are familiar with Route 109 and before the major work that DPW led with the improvement on the 109 corridor, we did have some temporary street markings to set that up before it became permanent. I don't know if it would be the street markings, but we would have some temporary setup for this recommended alternative if this is a direction that we end up going. So I just want to make sure about that, but I also want to just provide an opportunity for either Marianne or Michael, if there's any words that you'd like to share or comments you'd like to make.
Thanks, Chris. I just want to thank everyone for participating, especially everyone who asked questions and raised comments tonight. It was very helpful to listen. Thank you very much.
Chris, just with respect to just the temporary setup, again, it would be something, you know, cones, barrels, temporary plastic to a degree, barriers that we could set up there. And again, any implementation of a temporary setup, we would preferably like to do it during a peak season. So obviously going into the summer isn't fair to the residents. Again, going back to the famous word of the night, baseline data, to gather data based on summer traffic. So you'd want to do this when school's in session, when we're seeing accurate, consistent flows. And obviously we couldn't do it in the winter. So I don't want to hold anybody to this specific timeline of events because it obviously is relative to speaking with the parties that we have to speak with. But I would say shooting for a goal of September, October would probably be a fair guess based on availability of going into certain meetings. And again, soliciting the feedback that we need to, and approval from the town of Norwood and select board approval to proceed. So again, I don't want to be held to that time frame, but I mean, I would think that would probably be a fair assessment. And then at that point, if nothing's out there, we'd have a reason why, and we could just elaborate on it at that point.
So Todd, so that sounds like that would be the earliest.
I would say that, yeah, definitely the earliest. I wouldn't want to go out and do anything to any level prior to that, just because you're not getting a fair measure of what takes place during the September, October normal traffic flow season.
Thank you. Just before I turn it back over to Liz, are there any comments from public safety? Either Chief, I know Chief Deckers, Chief Silva, or Lieutenant Vinci at this time?
Chief Deckers, I'm fine with what's discussed. We'll continue to look at anything, and if they have other questions, they can feed them to us, and we'll do more research and look at all these solutions for you.
Thank you.
So Chris, can you tell us what your conversations with Norwood, like how fruitful those have been thus far? So I'm hearing the fall and I'm thinking kids are out already. It's summer. I've seen the near misses in spring. But the fall feels like a really far time away where something can happen. I appreciate the efforts. I love this design. I just am really concerned that, we started this conversation 2 years ago. And it just feels like it's stretching out forever, and it doesn't feel like it's going to get done.
So we've already begun conversations with the town of Norwood. There are some additional questions we have some additional questions we would like answered from them. So we are re-engaging with the town of Norwood. And then as far as the Norfolk County, we've already reached out to Norfolk County and shared with them the potential concept. And then we wanted to provide you with an opportunity first to hear it before we continue down at least the road with Norfolk County. So with the town of Norwood, again, we've had conversations with representatives from Norwood. We will be pulling our team together, requesting meetings with our counterparts over there to make sure we are dotting I's, crossing T's, and making sure who's going to be maintaining what's going to be in Norwood. I think that will be a big issue or big matter for Norwood. And I believe Todd has already indicated that we will be maintaining what's going to be put in place, or at least what's proposed. So those are some of the things that we'll be sharing with the select board at a future meeting. And obviously that meeting will be a public meeting.
Wonderful. And I think we have funds set aside already for mitigation efforts as a result of the university project. So I think I'm okay with that. I like that you've already started these conversations with Norwood. I think that's a nice, healthy start. I just ask you to keep us informed because we obviously have a vested interest. This is a safety issue at its heart. And, every single parent on the road that I've talked to is very, very concerned. I haven't talked to a parent that's not concerned.
Totally understandable. Thank you.
May I add a little bit of comments to what Christina just said? So I really wanted to echo, I've talked to people on the road, not necessarily live on the Forbes road. Actually, for example, I think it's the Spellman road. There's an old couple, they would take a walk all the time. They also raised the concerns about like the cars are being so quick around the road. So I think like people presenting here be able to join at this hour and Zoom meeting. Maybe not necessarily like all the people might have concerns about this situation. So I just wanted to raise that like what I heard from people. And then I really wanted to echo Christina's concerns about like kids are going to go out during the summer. So I appreciate like this working group has been really pushing things forward. So I wanted to ask like timeline wise, like there's those temporary measurement, they have to wait until Norwood town agree. Is that the case, or is there something already can happen temporarily? Even though maybe the measurement happens down, like maybe around still the same time as last year, but if there's any possibility of like do those temporary measurement, so we are helping with the traffic situation, even the measurement come later down the road. I would really wish you consider to put the measurement early on, so we are really helping with kind of the safety of the road.
So we certainly understand that request. The challenge is, and Liz, I don't know if can you go back to that one slide that shows the town lines, or the shared town line, excuse me. A majority of the recommended work is within the town of Norwood. So we just like Norwood can't do work in Westwood without the approval from the town of Westwood, we can't do work in Norwood without the approval of the town of Norwood. So we would need to get them on board before we could even do the temporary measures.
Okay, and sorry, I follow up a clarification question. So for the measurement you are going to discuss and propose, is that going to be specifically this measurement, or are you going to consider some of the proposal we made throughout this meeting, kind of maybe a speed hump or the science to say some of the science no right turn or no left turn, or even like between certain hours, no cut through traffickers. Are these also going to be considered, or are you specifically referring to this particular proposal about no right turn into the Everett Street?
you're referring with the town of Norwood? Is that the?
Right, right.
Yes. So working with this recommendation, we were certainly going to include this portion of the recommendation with the discussion of Norwood. But one of the reasons why, again, we wanted to have the opportunity to hear from the residents is to get some feedback. So we will certainly be taking some of the suggestions that we heard this evening and share that with the town of Norwood to see if there's something more that can be done.
Okay. But then if it's respected to just on the Forbes Road, so the town of the Westwood may consider doing additional things on the road, right? A part of this part that we are bordering with the Norwood.
If we're, yeah, we can, if this is not ultimately what is moved forward for construction, then we could work with some signage. That's, that's a fairly inexpensive thing. It's just, again, the enforcement of it. So, signage is a very low cost kind of thing to implement, but it has to be agreed upon by the select board, and that kind of, having any kind of restriction like that is something that has to be put in the town bylaws and made official. So that also would take some time and some, justification to do something like that.
We could, Shangfire, we could actually install an additional radar sign. We received a grant recently that's going to fund a good number of those signs throughout the community. So if that's something that the neighborhood would like to see, perhaps going in the opposite direction, we can definitely look to do something that measure. And honestly, the only thing I will offer out there again, and I think I almost lost my job last time we did it, but I'll throw it out there, was the yellow line. And it wasn't my idea the first time, but I guess I'll claim it right now. If you can get everybody on Forbes Road to agree to put a yellow line back on there, so I won't lose my job, then I'd be happy to coordinate that. But the truth of the matter is it was, I think we had about 7,000 phone calls when it got put in. And I had Brendan out there and everybody else out there trying to grind it. So if it's something that everybody in the neighborhood was on board with, and it is a form, it's a measure of traffic calming, whatever anybody thinks or not, Liz can confirm it. So, but other than that, an additional sign in the yellow line, there's really not much we can do right now.
No, thanks.
No, it's not effective. It won't get the job done.
And it's just uglifying, the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Whereas the other things don't, and also, are actually preventing, or I think would really prevent the cut through people. Cut through people are not going to be deterred by yellow lines.
Just had to throw it out there. Just putting it out there.
Thanks.
So Todd, you're not going to lose your job. Don't worry about that.
All right, good. I'm
I
back.
just want to make sure
Don't
everyone
worry.
understands something.
I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Too busy looking
We're
at their
seeing
phones.
comments that you don't support the yellow line, but I just want to make sure you understand what the yellow line is intended to do. So it's not
Yes, but
intended
people are looking
to
at their
stop
phones,
cut through
Chris.
traffic.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
just to be clear, it is a traffic calming measure. And Liz, if you can just briefly just explain the yellow line. We've already heard from a lot of you already. I just want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing.
Right. A yellow line or shoulder lines are really used to reduce the lane widths and really define the travel way. So what it does is it takes right now there's a wide open piece of pavement that people feel like they can drive wherever on. If there is a center line and a shoulder line, then it forces people to pay more attention to staying within those lines. And it's not, it wouldn't impact cut through traffic. It is found to be a traffic calming measure, quite honestly. You would think that wouldn't work, but focusing people to stay in their lane slows people down.
All right, thank you, Liz. So again, we heard from a lot of you, both comments, some chats that you don't want the yellow line. But again, just to put it out there, that is something that, Todd, if we were to move forward with the yellow line, is that something that could be done before September time?
It certainly could. We could probably coordinate that within the next 3 weeks to be done. But the signage is something, I think it's a definite, it's a positive. It's not going to resolve everything by any means, but it's effective. So I will look into ordering one of those, an additional one for the neighborhood.
So, and we will certainly take the recommendation for the sign, the additional sign that Todd's referring to the select board, have a discussion with the select board, and also share with them a summary of this conversation.
Excuse me for 1 second.
I don't know who's
This is
speaking.
Kathy O'Neill at 148 Forbes Road. When I first moved here 20 years ago, there was a white line down Forbes Street. Then on Halloween, for some reason, they put a double line down. We were never told in advance that it was going to take place, but they did it anyway. I petitioned the neighborhood. I went to every single house. No one wanted it. There was no one who said, oh, no, I'd like to have it. So I just want to put that on the record. I feel very passionate about the double yellow line.
So I understand, and Todd, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, when you were talking about a yellow line, were you talking about a double yellow line or a single yellow line?
No, we could do it. It was a single yellow line. The double yellow line was part of the previous traffic calming project from years ago. As part of that whole, I'll leave it at that. It was something that we kind of fell into, so.
Todd, we love you, but I don't think it's gonna work.
All right, so again, I want to thank everyone for your comments. Again, this meeting has been recorded. Liz, thank you for your presentation. Todd and Chief, and also are in attendance. So we will be taking this information again. Our next steps will be to continue to work with the town of Norwood and to work with the commissioners, and also bring this matter to the select board at one of their future meetings, and with the recommendation for that sign, speed sign that Todd was referring to. And we will certainly keep you in the loop. We'll share some information when this is going to be on the select board agenda to share it with this group. So if you'd like to attend that meeting, you certainly can.
We might have one last question from Susan Lynn.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. I apologize.
No,
Actually, can you hear me?
yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that. We kind of just joined the meeting late, so I guess I'm sorry I missed the first part of it. But I noticed that obviously the focus here is to try and find a way to lessen the traffic or reduce the speed or whatever. Whereas all I'm
Excuse
seeing.
me, sir. I'm sorry. It's Christopher Coleman. Could you just identify your name and your address, please?
Eric Lynn and Susan Lynn, 227 Forbes Road.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Like I was saying, I kind of just missed the first part, so you might have covered it. But if the intent is to do some mitigation, be it speed or traffic load or whatever, I kind of just noticed that your focus seems to be just on the Forbes and Everett end. I didn't notice anything that you might have might be suggesting for the actual Forbes road itself. I think the biggest issue actually is the overall speed of cars traveling up and down Forbes Road. I think most likely it's down Forbes Road, because going up, there's only that amount you can do. The thing is, there's a lot of high-speed traffic down Forbes Road, in between bumps, before you get to the first hump, in between the humps, and then after the hump. In fact, actually, I think most of the high speed tends to be coming from Canton down to the first hump. The middle part is primarily people kind of just charging up. Then they pass the hump, and then there's a whole kind of just speedy traffic down there. My comment basically is that if you're going to be doing any kind of real mitigation, we should find a way to actually calm that traffic going down Forbes Road, and not just focus on the intersection between Forbes and Everett. That helps, but I think most of it's people coming down from Forbes Road. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so again, thank you all for your comments, and thank you for attending this meeting. We will certainly keep you abreast of, again, when this matter goes before the select board for the recommendation, and updates on that recommendation regarding that speed sign that we will be discussing with the select board. and conversations with Norfolk County and the town of Norwood. So thank you all. Any closing remarks from public safety before we end the meeting?
None from fire.
I'm sorry for.
None from us, Chris.
Okay, thank
A
you.
follow-up question. Sorry.
Okay, last one.
Regarding the sign you said you are going to add, could you actually clarify what's the sign? Sorry, exactly, like it's just a speed sign or is actually kind of the one showing this your speed and number?
It would be identical to the one that was installed a few months back. It will actually show you the speed of the vehicle by which it's traveling. And Chris and Chief, I know that Officer Conley has I believe that sign has a functionality option that it can give you data that supports what's been going through, but Officer Conley can confirm that. I'm pretty certain it does though.
Oh, okay.
It does.
Okay, that's great to know.
So
Thank
you'll
you.
have two now going, I mean, it can pick up both directions, I believe, but if it doesn't, the other one will pick up the other direction as well, so.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much. I can sleep better tonight.
You're welcome.
Knowing that.
Thank you all. Liz, again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your work on this presentation, and we will be continuing to work with you on this.
You had a great turnout. I really appreciate everyone's time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.